They told me it would be easy. Serve drinks, smile, blend into the background. Christian Combs was hosting, and the yacht parties were legendary. But the second I stepped on board, something felt wrong. Laughter rang sharp in my ears. The lights felt too bright. The drinks shimmered like poison. And somewhere in the spaces between the music and the whispers, I could feel it. Something else in that room. Something watching. Something waiting. It wasn't just the people I should have feared. It was the presence they carried with them. Heavy, choking, invisible, but real. By the time I realized what I was trapped with, it was already too late. I sat there frozen as they said it out loud. Underage girls, private parties, drugs. The words didn't echo. They cracked through the courtroom air like a whip. You could feel the shift, the weight of it. Like everyone had been holding their breath without knowing it, and now there was no way to pretend we were talking about anything ordinary. I watched him, sitting just a few rows ahead of me. Christian Combs. In that moment, he didn't look like the polished son of a music empire. He looked small, hollowed out, like the walls around him were closing in and there was no door left to run through. He didn't wait for the session to end. No apology, no glance back. He just pushed his chair back, hard enough that the scrape of it against the floor made everyone flinch, and stormed toward the exit doors. Photographers scrambled to catch him. The snapping of cameras sounded like gunfire in the stunned silence. His lawyers didn't even try to stop him. They just stared, pale-faced, as he disappeared. And in the wreckage he left behind, the whispering, the wide eyes, the reporters frantically typing notes into their phones, I sat there and tried to breathe. Because the truth was, I wasn't shocked. Not the way they were. I didn't need the headlines or the transcripts to know how deep it went. I didn't need anyone to spell it out for me, because I had already lived it. I had already felt the cold press of it against my skin, the sickness that clung to those parties like fog, the hunger that lived behind those smiling faces. I had seen the cracks in the glamour a long time ago, the way the music got too loud to hear yourself think, the way the air shifted when certain people entered a room, the way laughter could turn mean in an instant. They were just now catching up to what some of us already knew. There are things you can't walk away from, things that follow you no matter how fast you run, and no courtroom exit would ever be enough to wash away what was waiting outside those doors. It wasn't a family vacation like they promised. It was chaos from the moment the yacht left the dock. At first, it looked like the brochures: sparkling water, blue skies, a crew in pressed uniforms moving silently through the halls. But even then, there was something off. Something about the way the guests moved, the way the laughter sounded forced, the way no one ever really looked each other in the eyes. By sunset, the facade had slipped. The music throbbed through the walls, low and heavy, almost too deep to hear. Like a second heartbeat you couldn't escape. Strangers stumbled through the halls, some half-dressed, some already glassy-eyed. The staff kept their heads down. Nobody asked questions. Nobody said a word when the guests grew louder, rougher, hungrier. At night, it felt like the yacht belonged to someone else, something else. The parties blurred into a sick parody of celebration, dancing, drugs, drinks that glowed under black light, served in crystal glasses that left an oily film on your tongue. I remember stepping into one of the lounges and feeling the air shift, thick and suffocating. Men in designer suits lounged back on velvet couches while women circled like moths around a dying flame. Some of the guests I recognized, NBA players, rappers, movie stars, faces that smiled from magazine covers, now half hidden behind clouds of smoke and the dim flicker of candlelight. The whispers were the worst. They slid through the dark like snakes, promises, invitations, threats, all delivered with the same lazy smirk. You learned quickly not to accept any drink you didn't see poured yourself. You learned to smile politely, laugh lightly, and keep moving before someone decided you belonged to them. The drinks burned. The walls seemed to pulse, and somewhere between the music and the flickering lights, you could feel it, that other thing, heavier than the waves pounding against the hull, pressing down on your chest. It wasn't just the drugs. It wasn't just the people. There was something else on that yacht. Something no amount of security or money could keep out. It crept along the edges of the parties, unseen but not unfelt. A presence that turned smiles into sneers and hands into claws. The yacht wasn't sailing through water anymore. It was drifting through something much darker. I told myself to keep my head down. I told myself it would all be over soon. Just survive the trip. Smile. Serve the drinks. Ignore the shadows stretching across the floors. But some shadows aren't meant to be ignored. Some shadows reach out. And once they touch you, they don't let go. It was late when it happened. The parties had stretched long into the night, blurring into each other until I couldn't tell one day from the next. I was moving through the lounge, balancing a tray of drinks, when I felt it, a weight, heavy, deliberate, like someone had thrown a net over me without even touching me. At first, I thought it was just the usual, another drunk guest sizing me up. But when I turned my head, it wasn't just anyone. It was him, Christian Combs. He was standing across the room, near the edge of the dance floor, half shrouded in shadow. The flashing lights caught on the sharp lines of his face, the same face I'd seen smiling on billboards and Instagram feeds. But here, under this light, he looked different, colder, hungrier. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stared, long enough that my skin began to crawl under the weight of it, long enough that every instinct inside me started screaming. I dropped my gaze, pretending not to notice, pretending that if I kept moving, he would look away. But I could feel it, his eyes tracking me as I crossed the room, as I ducked behind clusters of guests, as I slipped between waitstaff carrying trays of champagne. I lost sight of him near the main bar, and for a moment I thought maybe it was over. Maybe he'd gotten bored. Maybe it was just another scare my mind had invented in this place where nothing ever felt real. But when I turned down the hallway leading toward the service rooms, he was there again, closer this time, still silent, still staring. No drink in his hand, no friends around him, just him, standing there like a statue planted in the middle of the hall, blocking the way. The music thudded behind me, muffled by the walls, but it wasn't enough to drown out the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. He tilted his head slightly, studying me the way someone might study an animal in a cage. There was no friendliness in his face, no curiosity, only possession, only certainty. Like he had already decided something, and I just didn't know it yet. I clutched my tray tighter and forced myself to move, past him, down the hall, into the safety of the back rooms where the other staff bustled and shouted over the music. When I finally allowed myself to breathe, I realized my hands were shaking so badly that glasses clinked against each other on the tray. I told myself it was nothing, that it was just a look, that I was making it bigger in my head than it really was. But deep down, I knew better. Something had shifted. Something had noticed me. And on that yacht, being noticed was the most dangerous thing that could happen. You could stay invisible for only so long. You could only blend into the wallpaper until the wrong pair of eyes found you. And Christian's eyes had found me. Not by accident, not out of boredom. It was deliberate. And that night, for the first time, I realized that surviving the trip wasn't going to be about luck or caution anymore. It was going to be about staying one step ahead of something that had already decided it owned me. After that night, the yacht stopped pretending. Whatever thin layer of normalcy had covered the parties peeled away, and what lived underneath was something raw and rotting. The halls never slept. Women in tight dresses and men in crumpled suits floated through the corridors at all hours, glasses in hand, smiles sharp and empty. The lights dimmed lower each night until it felt like you were moving through a dream or a nightmare, half awake, half trapped. Everywhere I looked, bodies pressed against each other, whispering things I didn't want to hear. The music was louder, thicker, the bass vibrating so deep you could feel it in your teeth. The air stank of perfume, sweat, and something sourer that clung to your skin even after you washed it off. It wasn't a party anymore. It was a feeding ground. You could see it in the eyes of the guests, how they roamed the rooms, hungry for something more than just a drink or a dance. You could see it in the way the staff moved, heads bowed, faces tight with fear. Nobody was safe here. Not really. And sometimes, late at night, when the halls were almost empty and the candles burned low, I thought I could see it, the thing that clung to this place. A shape that wasn't quite a shadow, slinking along the edges of the walls. A flicker in the corner of my vision that vanished when I turned to look. I told myself it was exhaustion, that my mind was cracking under the pressure. Until the night I found Christian alone. I was cutting through one of the side lounges, trying to avoid the worst of the crowd, when I heard it. Soft, broken sobs. At first, I thought it was one of the other girls. But when I stepped closer, I saw him. Christian Combs, sitting alone in the corner of the room, head in his hands, shaking like a child. There was no music in here, no lights, just the thin gray moonlight spilling through the porthole windows, making everything look skeletal and wrong. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. And then I saw it, behind him, moving through the shadows on the wall, something blacker than black, coiling slow and deliberate. It wasn't a trick of the light. It wasn't exhaustion. It was real. It slid closer to him, almost tenderly, like it owned him. And even though the room was cold, I felt sweat bead along my spine. I backed away slowly, heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. But he never looked up, never stopped crying, never even seemed to notice he wasn't alone. And as I slipped out the door and back into the crowded chaos, I knew whatever was haunting this yacht wasn't just after me. It already had him. I should have run. I should have left everything behind and found a way to disappear. But by then, the yacht wasn't just a place. It was a living thing. It breathed against the walls, pulsed under the floors, and it watched. That night, I was moving through the lower hallways, heading toward the service galley to grab a clean set of glasses. Most of the guests had drifted upstairs toward the main deck, where the bass thundered and bodies moved like smoke. Down here, it was almost quiet. Almost. The lights flickered overhead, dim and sickly yellow, casting long, shivering shadows along the narrow halls. The air smelled thick, like salt, sweat, and something fouler lurking underneath. I didn't hear him approach. I just felt it. A sudden pressure against the air. A drop in temperature that made the hair on my arm stand on end. When I turned, he was there. Christian. Not the polished celebrity the cameras loved. Not even the broken boy I had glimpsed crying in the dark. This was something else. He staggered toward me, shirt half unbuttoned, eyes glassy and unfocused, a lazy grin pulling at the corners of his mouth. But there was no warmth behind it, no humanity. He reeked of alcohol, sweat, and something chemical, sharp enough to make my stomach turn. "Where you going?" he slurred, voice low and sticky. I tried to back away, to laugh it off, to vanish the way I'd done so many times before. But he was faster. His hand snapped around my wrist, fingers digging into my skin with bruising force. "Stay," he breathed, too close now, his breath sour against my cheek. I yanked my arm, tried to twist away, but the corridor seemed to narrow around us, the walls folding inward, trapping me. The lights above us dimmed again, not a mechanical flicker this time, but a slow, deliberate draining, as if something was swallowing the light. Behind Christian, the shadows deepened, pulsing in time with the heavy beat of the music above. And within that blackness, something moved, not a figure, not anything human, a ripple, darker than the dark, coiling just beyond reach, watching, waiting. Christian didn't seem to notice, or maybe he didn't care. His hand slid up my arm, clumsy and desperate, tugging me closer. I could feel the heat of him, the frantic beat of his heart through his skin, the frantic hunger rolling off him in waves. "No," I said, my voice a ragged whisper. He laughed, low, ugly. Somewhere down the hall, the shadows stretched, reaching long clawed fingers across the floor toward us. The walls seemed to breathe, shuddering as if the yacht itself wanted to pull me under. I twisted, shoved, fought. But he slammed me back against the wall, pinning me there with the weight of his body. I felt his hands grab at my waist, the cold press of desperation in his touch. Above us, the lights flared, not brighter but redder, bathing everything in the sick glow of a dying star. For one breathless second, I caught a glimpse of it in the reflection of a brass porthole. Not just Christian, not just me. Something crouched over his shoulder, black and endless, with hollow eyes and a mouth stretched wide enough to swallow the world. It clung to him, fingers dug deep into his shoulders like a puppeteer pulling its strings, and it was smiling. A smile that wasn't meant for him, a smile that was meant for me. The bile rose hot in my throat. I jerked my knee up hard, caught him in the gut. He grunted, stumbled back. I didn't wait. I didn't breathe. I ran. Down the hall, through the twisting maze of doors and corridors, until the music grew louder and the people returned, drunken, oblivious, laughing at nothing. I didn't stop until I was back among the others, where the lights burned too bright and the air was thick with smoke. Safe, for now. But I knew something had changed. Christian wasn't alone in that room, and neither was I. I left that yacht, but it never really left me. The engine's hum still vibrates through my bones when the nights get too quiet. The smell of salt and smoke clings to the back of my throat long after the party ended. Somewhere out there, Christian Combs walked away, too. Back to his mansion, his studios, his cameras flashing bright enough to blind the world to what happened in the dark. Back to the life he was born into, where power erases everything, even the screams no one else wanted to hear. But me, I carried it. The bruises faded. The handprints disappeared. The skin healed. But there are marks you can't wash off. Not with time, not with distance. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I see that room again. Not the walls or the floors, but the thing crouched over him, still smiling, still reaching. And sometimes just before I fall asleep, I swear I can feel it. The cold breath against my neck, the invisible fingers curling around my ribs, a reminder that it wasn't just about Christian. It wasn't even just about that night. It was about something older, something deeper, a hunger that doesn't die with morning light, a debt that doesn't vanish just because you run far enough. They called them parties. They called it entertainment. They called it harmless fun. But what I saw, what I lived, it was something else. Something that needed bodies to survive. Something that fed on pain like it was oxygen. And once you've been touched by it, once you've been seen, it doesn't ever fully let you go. People will read headlines. They'll shake their heads. They'll forget. They always do. But for those of us who were there, really there, the forgetting is the part we never get. I survive now by staying small, by staying quiet, by pretending it never happened, at least on the outside. But inside, I'm still trapped in that endless night, running through corridors that never end, chased by something I'll never outrun. I didn't just walk off that yacht. A part of me never made it back. And sometimes late at night when the world falls silent and the shadows grow long, I wonder, maybe that was the point all along.